If I can ask everyone to take their seats, we'll begin. The Subcommittee on Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade will now come to order. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement. And again, I want to say good morning to everyone in the hearing room today, and especially to our panel of witnesses as we begin to explore the emerging market in our digital ecosystem, the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things marks a crucial juncture for the United States economy and for American consumers as our country looks for new economic engines and new sources for jobs. It promises a world in which digital and physical elements connect, gather information real time, predict circumstances, prevent problems, and create opportunities. This morning, some of us attended the subcommittee's Internet of Things showcase. We saw firsthand some of the innovative ways that companies are using the Internet and networked sensors to create, enhance, and customize products to better meet consumer preference. I thank all of the companies who participated in this morning's event. The products and services displayed at the showcase represent how, in just a very short period of time, increased Internet connectivity capability have led to the creation of a vast ecosystem in which machines, devices, appliances, and a whole host of other things are able to connect to the Internet. We may be most familiar with this concept in the context of a connected refrigerator that lets us know what we need to purchase on our next trip to the grocery store, or a smartwatch that informs us when we've reached our 10,000 steps or met our caloric intake for the day, or a video monitor in our homes that can be watched remotely when traveling for work or vacation. These types of groundbreaking technologies, among many others, are providing valuable conveniences and invaluable information to users. And yet this is just the beginning. Much of the excitement surrounding the Internet of Things lies in its immeasurable scope and potential to touch everything, to touch everyone and every sector of the economy. And we're already seeing fulfillment of this promise as this technology expands to other areas and captures more than just objects and things. Internet connectivity is being integrated into industrial processes, transportation routes, workforce practices, buildings, and other operational systems and entities across several different industries and environments. This is improving, this is revolutionizing the efficiency, productivity, and effectiveness of the way that individuals, business, and governments are conducting various tasks and responsibilities. The Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything, is fundamentally transforming the way we operate and participate in today's world. The market is still very young. The potential for growth and innovation is, at this point, virtually limitless. As a physician, I see this potential firsthand in the healthcare space. Medical professionals are able to interact with patients in revolutionary ways through connected devices, really devices that no one could have imagined just a few short years ago. This technology is offering opportunities to reduce healthcare costs, improve healthcare quality, and most importantly, to save lives. The significance of the Internet of Things is that these types of benefits are not unique to healthcare. This technology truly has the potential to transform every sector of the economy in most profound ways. Notwithstanding the economic and societal benefits of the Internet of Things, the consumer impact of this market should be a key focus of our discussion today. While consumers are benefiting from the technologies, attention must also be given to appropriate consumer protections for privacy and security. Today we'll explore these issues, and we should recognize that all devices are not created equal. They are manufactured for different purposes, they have different capacities, and they generate varying levels of degrees of consumer information. Unlike other established markets, the Internet of Things is still developing, and quite honestly, we're trying to understand the nature and the basis of the threats that face this ecosystem. In our examination of privacy and security issues, it is important that we balance these concerns with the creativity and innovation that is driving this market. Too much potential for economic progress and consumer welfare is at stake to act without a full appreciation for what this market can offer. I want to thank the witnesses again for making time to be with us here this morning. I look forward to an informative and engaged discussion on this very important topic. And now would like to yield back my time and recognize the subcommittee ranking member, Ms. Schakowsky, for 5 minutes for the purpose of an opening statement.
Well, you don't think often of events in this building as being like really fun, and this is a day that we can say that it is, because the showcase down the hall is very, very exciting, and we're going to hear about things that I think certainly can enhance and spice up and make our lives easier and better from incredible entrepreneurs. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank the chairman for holding the showcase and the hearing. I'd like to take a moment to introduce one of our witnesses, Brad Morehouse, CEO of LiveWatch Security, which does have a demonstration over in the showcase. It's an innovative company from my hometown of Evanston, Illinois, that uses the Internet of Things technology to better protect, inform, and connect its customers. LiveWatch has been honored with the 2014 Gold Stevie Award for Customer Service, the 2013 Silver Stevie Award for E-commerce Customer Service, and was recognized as an enterprise leader by The Economist. Mr. Moorhead also participated in our showcase this morning. I welcome him and thank him for his time today. As someone who often has people coming in and out of my house who don't always know the code on my security system, as someone who regularly can't find her key, I want to tell you that these kinds of technologies can mean a lot in my life. The Internet of Things is one of the fastest growing technologies today. An estimated 25 billion products are now connected to the Internet, and that number is expected to double by 2020. Internet of Things technology brings very clear benefits to consumers, vehicles that can tell a driver if a part is in need of replacement. As the chairman mentioned, refrigerators can tell a parent to buy another gallon of milk. Health gadgets that monitor a person's heart rate, running or walking speed, distance covered, all of these products and many more are made possible through the Internet of Things. But this technology also presents some new challenges. How do we ensure that these technologies are secure? The chairman was right to raise the question of the important balance that sensitive information doesn't get out to unintended audiences, or that products connected to the Internet aren't remotely deactivated by an unauthorized user. We must ensure that as this technology continues to grow, we take common sense steps to assure that it's safe and secure. These are issues worthy of the subcommittee's time and consideration. Again, I look forward to hearing from this distinguished panel about how they are creatively harnessing the Internet of Things. And I would yield at this time for Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to thank the ranking member for yielding me some of her time. I want to introduce Brian Van Harlingen, the Chief Technology Officer at Belkin. Belkin is a local Los Angeles company, and we're very proud of them. And they've been doing a great job as a driver for jobs and innovations in our great city. Since the 1980s, Belkin has been on the forefront of innovation, creating products that benefit all of our constituents in their daily lives. I look forward to watching how Belkin will use what we are calling the Internet of Things to bring new products and services to their consumers, and I look forward to their testimony today. So welcome to Washington, D.C., and thank you so much for your testimony. I yield back my time to the ranking member.
Does the gentlelady yield back?
Oh, I yield back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank the gentlelady. The chair now recognizes the vice chairwoman of the full committee, the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really do appreciate the attention to this issue, and that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are willing to work on this. We don't need to let this get away from us, if you will. And Mr. Welch and I have put a great deal of attention on the privacy and data security issue for the past couple of years, and thereby have had the opportunity with our colleagues to dig a little deeper into some of these issues. Going back to the chairman's remarks, I think it's important that we look at size and scope when we discuss the Internet of Things. You can look at Cisco's report, 50 billion devices connected to the Internet by the time we get to the end of this decade. And then you layer upon that what the expectations are for global economic output and contribution to the global economy from this. And right now, by the time we get to 2025, they're saying $2.7, $6.2 trillion. Looking at that. So when you look at size and scope and impact, it behooves us to say, okay, how do we get our hands around this and make certain that we approach this in a light touch way, that we encourage innovation, as Ms. Schakowsky said. We rely on a lot of these, and people like this because it does add convenience to our lives. But that accelerates the additional problem of privacy and security, whether it's B2B or B2C, and how that is going to be filtered data and how we're going to mine it and what we're going to extrapolate and how we protect that, how we anonymize it, et cetera, et cetera. We have to realize that we are still running, and hopefully always will, on an open source platform. Go back to when the Internet started. 4 known users, 4 disparate and varied locations, all known one to another, all vetted, all secure. So we want to be here to enhance that experience for the 50 billion items that are going to be attached and still provide the underpinning and infrastructure that was there when it was the initial project of 4 known users. So we welcome you all. We're going to be direct with our questions and probably a bit more conversational than some of the other hearings that you participate in. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the attention to the issue and look forward to the discussion. I yield the balance of my time for whomever would like to claim it.
Does any other member on the Republican side seek time? Seeing none, the gentlelady yields back her time. The chair recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Pallone, 5 minutes for an opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing gives us an opportunity to look at a new and evolving technological developments. The Internet of Things has great potential for growing the American economy and offering consumers new technology that will enrich their lives and empower them in ways never before thought possible. Earlier today, along with my colleagues, I had an opportunity to see some of the innovation coming out of the Internet of Things at a showcase hosted by the subcommittee, and I was proud to have their Impact Health, a New Jersey company that's building wireless technologies into products to solve practical healthcare needs. Impact Health has taken advantage of wireless technology to help ensure patients are taking their medication and staying healthy. And the growth in these types of devices is so rapid that they soon will be as ubiquitous as electrical outlets. In fact, it's estimated that there will be 50 billion connected products by the year 2020. But in many ways, the future is already here. Just last Friday, Tesla announced that it would remotely install software updates in its Model S cars, providing them with capability of autonomous driving. Cars that drive themselves were once found only in science fiction, but today can be a reality with a quick update sent over the Internet. Yet along with these innovations come some new vulnerabilities that we in Congress have a responsibility to protect consumers against. And let's take a hypothetical situation for a moment. Let's say that I wear a bracelet that monitors different aspects of my health and physical activity. It helps me keep track of how many steps I take each day. It tells me how well I sleep at night. It monitors my heart rate. And along with an app in my phone, it tracks where I've gone. While all this data is important to me, I may not want to have it released to a potential employer who requires it as part of the job application. I might not want the bracelet manufacturer selling it to an insurance company who might then utilize it for my insurance coverage, and I certainly do not want a hacker assessing the bracelet to post my information on the Internet or to monitor my location. So without strong security and privacy protections, consumers can be at real risk. These risks can have devastating consequences when the product is accessed and controlled remotely by an unscrupulous actor. One hacker has shown that he can remotely access an insulin pump and induce a lethal overdose. Others have shown that they can remotely hijack the operations of a car, suddenly turning the wheel or cutting off the brakes. In order to protect consumers, there has to be strong security and privacy protections built into these products. By building in security, manufacturers can more effectively prevent hackers from accessing a device or the data it produces or collects. At last week's hearing, the FTC's witness stated that its experience in evaluating the vulnerability in Internet of Things products has led the agency to recommend that device security be added to data security and breach notification legislation. By building in privacy, consumers can have confidence in these products, and consumers need to know that their intensely personal information will not be shared with the world without their consent. So I'm confident great things will be done through the Internet of Things, but I believe that while we encourage innovation through these new technologies, we also have to be innovative in how we protect the consumer. I yield back. I don't think any other member on our side wants the time, so I'll yield back. Oh, you do? Okay, I'll yield my remaining time to the gentleman from California.
Thank you very much. I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to thank Intel. So, Ms. Schuler, I just wanted to say thank you very much. Intel made an announcement just a few months ago that they're investing $300 million into their internal diversity initiatives over at Intel, and I hope that would be a starting point for all of the industries to follow suit. As these industries are growing, they're the jobs of the future, and for Intel to make that commitment and that self-assessment is just wonderful. And many people on both sides of the aisle believe that industry does a great job when they police themselves and when they look in the mirror and they say, we can do better. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to remind everyone that self-reflection and self-understanding of where we stand as individuals or organizations in the community certainly would give us an opportunity to step forward and say we can do better. And I think Intel has done a tremendous job, and thank you for that commitment. Thank you. I yield back my time.
Chair, thanks the gentleman. The gentleman yields back. So again, we want to welcome all of our witnesses and thank you for agreeing to testify before the subcommittee today. Our witness panel for today's hearing will include Mr. Daniel Castro, who's the Vice President of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, Mr. Brian Van Harlingen, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Belkin International, Ms. Rose Schooler, Vice President of the Internet of Things Group and the General Manager of the Internet of Things Strategy and Technology Office at Intel Corporation, and Mr. Brad Moorhead, the Chief Executive Officer at LiveWatch Security. You're each going to be recognized in turn for 5 minutes for the purposes of an opening statement. Mr. Castro, we'll begin with you. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Burgess, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the Internet of Things with you today. The Internet of Things represents the idea that ordinary objects will be embedded with sensors and connected to the Internet. While many of these changes will be subtle, over the long term, this technology could ultimately have an enormously positive impact on individuals, businesses, and society. For example, consider healthcare. Individuals can use connected devices to prevent, screen, and diagnose a variety of medical conditions. By collecting and tracking data about their health, individuals can identify health problems sooner, get treatment faster, and save on healthcare costs. For example, patients can use smart pill bottles to receive automated alerts when it's time to take a dose, and these types of interventions can help decrease the rate of medication noncompliance, which costs the United States almost $300 billion annually. Or look at energy. The Internet of Things is helping to provide solutions to the global energy challenge by enabling clean energy technologies. For example, in homes, connected devices like smart thermostats can automate energy-efficient practices and save consumers money. Or look at public safety. The Internet of Things helps build not only smarter cities, but safer cities. In homes, connected sensors can improve safety by detecting fires and other emergencies quickly and reliably and alert authorities sooner. In vehicles, sensors can detect a crash and then automatically alert emergency responders about the vehicle's location and the number of occupants. Some of these systems can even predict the injuries that might have resulted. The availability of this real-time data is crucial in an emergency since a faster response time can mean the difference between life and death. The Internet of Things is transforming industries like manufacturing as well. Using low-cost sensors and automation, factories can automatically turn off the lights and air conditioning when workers leave, shut off valves if sensors detect leaks, and shut down dangerous equipment if sensors detect a malfunction. Innovative manufacturers can use the data collected on the factory floor to gain insights about the physical fabrication process, thereby improving efficiency, increasing yields, and reducing product defects. Manufacturers can also use sensors to collect real-time data such as temperature and moisture about their shipments to help ensure quality and optimize logistics. More information can mean the difference between a recall and a successful shipment. As you can see, a significant amount of the data collected by the Internet of Things will not involve information about individuals, but instead will be about the environment, factories, vehicles, infrastructure, and other electronic devices. And when data is collected about people, much of it will be de-identified and aggregated. But when it comes to personal privacy, Congress should tread lightly so as to avoid impeding innovation. In particular, Congress should recognize that privacy principles designed for a small data world do not work in a big data world. Proposals such as data minimization are based on the mistaken belief that it's always possible to predetermine what information is useful at an early stage and collect only that minimum amount. Many of the benefits from data come from exploratory analysis that finds new trends, relationships, and insights that were not obvious at the outset. Restricting data collection could severely curtail the many potential benefits of the Internet of Things. As more devices are connected to the Internet, it will be more important than ever that they incorporate strong security features. While the private sector is moving in the right direction, Congress should further incentivize companies to adopt strong security practices by adopting policies that decrease the cost of strong security and increase the cost of weak security. For example, Congress should pass data breach notification legislation that preempts state laws and reduces the legal compliance costs companies face from abiding by multiple rules. This will allow them to focus more resources on improving the security of their products. Congress should also pass cybersecurity information sharing legislation to help organizations respond to real-time threats. Finally, Congress should encourage universities to integrate cybersecurity training into technical degrees so that the next generation of coders and engineers build strong security into their products. By improving education, Congress can help raise the bar for security across the entire U.S. tech sector. The success of the Internet of Things will depend in part on the actions of Congress. Just as the United States needed a national broadband strategy, it also needs a national strategy for the Internet of Things. Not only should Congress avoid policies that would impose costs, limit innovation, slow adoption, should actively support accelerating the development and deployment of the Internet of Things, such as by creating pilot projects for smart cities, encouraging smart infrastructure projects, and designing an efficient regulatory review process for wearable health technologies. The Internet of Things has the potential to positively impact virtually every industry, from agriculture to healthcare, and the federal government should be an active partner in ensuring its success. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I look forward to your questions.
The chair thanks the gentleman. The gentleman yields back. Mr. Van Harlingen, you're recognized 5 minutes for the purpose of an opening statement, please.
Thank you and good morning, Chairman Burgess, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the committee. Thank you for holding this important hearing on the Internet of Things, otherwise known as IoT. My name is Brian Van Harlingen, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Belkin International. Belkin is the maker of the Wemo home automation brand, which allows users to remotely measure, monitor, and manage their homes via a software suite, including applications, cloud infrastructure, and a portfolio of more than 25 connected devices. Surpassing 1 million activations, the Wemo ecosystem ranges from switches to lighting to home appliances. After years of talk, the Internet of Things has arrived, and the pace of innovation is accelerating at a phenomenal speed. We are pleased that Congress and other policymakers have joined the conversation, as policy awareness and leadership will help to maximize the benefits of this technological revolution and ensure consumer confidence. IoT will drive economic growth, create jobs, and facilitate entrepreneurship in completely new markets. In my testimony, I'll discuss 3 key topics: consumer benefits, technological considerations, and privacy and security. First, consumer benefits. Wemo has been designed as the most approachable entry point into the smart home. Affordable and easy to use, Wemo provides bite-sized solutions to make consumers' lives easier, simpler, and better. Wemo's new Echo technology uses the home's existing infrastructure to monitor, measure, and manage water, electricity, and natural gas usage. Using advanced data science and machine learning, these technologies have enormous potential to save both money and resources. As a connected solution, Wemo gains insight into how consumers use Wemo devices in order to provide better experiences and design future products. For example, through data analytics, we learned that consumers were finding ways to turn on their devices at sunrise and sunset, so we built that functionality directly into our Wemo app. We also learned that most Wemo switch users were using them for lighting purposes, so we developed and marketed the Wemo Light Switch as our next product. These are examples of how we use the data from the Wemo Cloud to drive better experiences for our consumers. Second, technological considerations. IoT for the home and business cannot exist without two primary technologies, Wi-Fi and smart devices. As the maker of both Wemo and Linksys Wi-Fi routers, Belkin understands both markets. Wi-Fi has been widely adopted with a 61% penetration rate in U.S. homes. Wemo products use familiar Wi-Fi technology. They do not rely on hubs for connectivity or intelligence. Wemo can integrate directly into partner products and serve as an on-ramp to the Internet of Things for everyday products like Crock-Pot slow cookers, Mr. Coffee coffee makers, and Osram Sylvania light bulbs. From a policy perspective, the government and Congress can help promote and grow the Internet of Things by making sure these devices can talk to each other. Wireless spectrum, already an important technology policy issue, becomes even more important as IoT adoption accelerates and billions of new devices come online. Congress and the FCC should continue to free up new spectrum, particularly on an unlicensed basis. Failure to expand spectrum will stifle IoT innovation and growth. Last but not least, privacy and security. At Wemo, we believe the nascent IoT market will benefit when consumers know privacy and security are our top priorities. We believe the federal government can take a light-touch regulatory approach and work with the industry to ensure consumer confidence. We applaud this committee's efforts to pass data breach legislation that would address the patchwork of state data breach laws. Wemo has a very transparent data policy and strictly controls all PII. The data collected from Wemo devices is aggregated and anonymized. Non-personal information is used to identify trends, to improve network performance, and to provide additional benefits to consumers. We understand the importance of data security and employ a combination of industry-led security standards, procedures, and organizational methods. We have safeguards in place to prevent security breaches and work closely with outside security researchers to identify and address potential security vulnerabilities. We support the latest security applications and continuously improve and push consumer device firmware and application updates. Security will always be a top priority, and as the technology evolves, so will our efforts to provide safe and secure products for consumers. In conclusion, at Wemo, we're focused on delivering the most user-friendly, innovative, and secure products. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and to share our vision of the Internet of Things and answer any questions the committee might have.
Chair, thanks the gentleman. The chair now recognizes Ms. Schooler. 5 minutes for purpose of an opening statement, please.
Good morning, Chairman Burgess, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on the importance of the United States establishing a global leadership role in the Internet of Things, or the IoT. As head of Intel's IoT Strategy and Technology Office, I own the IoT strategy for the company. Intel's 30 years of investment, innovations, and standards leadership in the evolution of computing provide the foundational elements of this strategy. Intel believes the IoT presents a transformational opportunity for the U.S. and for the world. It will enable innovation, increase productivity, and deliver efficiencies across the public and private sector. While some think of the IoT as smart thermostats and wearables, these consumer devices are only a few of the many applications. The primary economic driver will be non-consumer areas, such as industrial and commercial applications. I will address 3 topics that are important to consider as you chart your policy. 1, why is the IoT important? 2, what are the barriers to a successful IoT ecosystem? And 3, how can policymakers accelerate deployments to ensure U.S. leadership? First, why is the IoT important? It will drive unprecedented benefits for government, businesses, consumers, and communities. It is estimated that 50 billion devices will connect to the Internet by 2020, generating 44 zettabytes of data. Consider that in 2009, the World Wide Web was estimated at just a half a zettabyte. The IoT presents the opportunity to connect these devices, efficiently analyze the data, and use the information to improve our decision-making. In doing so, the IoT is expected to have a multi-trillion-dollar global economic impact. What should most excite U.S. policymakers is that America and other developed economies are expected to capture 20% of this impact if we lead. Let's consider one IoT application. Saia Trucking is located in Georgia and has a nationwide fleet of 3,000 trucks. They recently deployed an Intel-based IoT solution which alters routes and guides drivers' performance real time. Saia increased fuel efficiency by 6%, translating into $15 million of annual savings. The U.S. trucking industry consumes 54 billion gallons of fuel per year. Extrapolating that success, our nation could save over 3 billion gallons of fuel yearly while reducing our CO2 emissions. What are potential barriers to a successful IoT ecosystem? One barrier, as noted, could be security, if not implemented from the outset. For this reason, Intel prioritizes security as the foundational element of our IoT strategy. We will integrate security at the outset, building cryptography into our chips to enable strong identity and data protection. In addition to the compute device itself, our solutions will employ advanced software security to prevent harmful applications from being activated on the device or taking down the network. Integrating multiple layers of security at the outset enables trusted data transmission necessary for successful IoT deployments. Other potential barriers include connecting to legacy infrastructure, interoperability between devices, and developing global standards. To address these barriers, Intel collaborated with industry leaders to define 5 tenets of successful IoT solutions. They are security, ease of connectivity, interoperability, data analytics, and ease of deploying new applications and services. Based on these tenets, we recently launched the Intel IoT platform. Finally, how can policymakers accelerate IoT deployments to ensure U.S. leadership? Candidly, the U.S. is behind. Other countries are aggressively investing in and deploying IoT implementations to transform their economies, address societal problems, and spur innovation. China, Brazil, Germany have all adopted national IoT plans with time-bound goals and are investing heavily in IoT R&D and infrastructure. The U.S. must leverage our vast resources and capabilities, promoting industry alignment around these large-scale IoT deployments based on secure, open, and interoperable solutions will showcase U.S. leadership. Congress can advance our nation's IoT momentum by collaborating with industry to establish a national IoT strategy, encourage public-private partnerships, and invest in IoT research. Intel is confident that the U.S. can lead the IoT transformation with a continued open dialogue, as you're doing here today, and by implementing some of these recommendations. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Chair recognizes Mr. Moorhead 5 minutes for the purpose of an opening statement, please.
Thank you, Chairman Burgess. Ranking Member Schakowsky and members of the committee. We use the IoT every day when we check traffic or look at the weather forecast, and we also see it in the wide variety of smart devices that are popping up everywhere, like smart refrigerators, smart coffee makers, or smart watches. But rather than talking about smart coffee makers and refrigerators, I would prefer to illustrate the potential benefits of a robust Internet of Things by sharing a brief story about how the security alarm industry works. Imagine an emergency at your home or at your school or at your work. A burglary or a violent crime in progress with multiple potential victims on the scene, where the intruder or the victim has triggered an alarm. Speed and information are critically important to the first responders. However, when that security alarm goes off at that home, business, or public location, that signal is delayed for over a minute to reduce false alarms. Furthermore, the process of notifying the Alarm Monitoring Center is surprisingly manual. As the alarm is transmitted after the delay, to a person in the alarm center, who must then be connected to another person at a 911 public safety answering point, or PSAP, for emergency dispatch. After an average 1 to 3 minute phone conversation between that security station and the PSAP safety agency, emergency responders are contacted and dispatched to the site of the alarm, again, where time is of the essence. But they're given, the first responders are given nothing more than basic information about the type of alarm and location of the incident. This average dispatch in total can take 5 to 10 minutes, and that is valuable time and information that is lost in a true emergency. By some estimates from the DOJ, each year more than 1 million police hours are wasted due to these human errors and communication issues in this transmission process. Adding to that frustration is the fact that there may be additional security cameras, motion sensors, door sensors, or other sensors at the site of the emergency capturing valuable information. Unfortunately, in most cases, those additional sensors and cameras have no way of communicating to the monitoring station, 911 PSAP, or the first responders. In other words, there's potential life-saving data available that no one sees. This can cause first responders to arrive at the wrong place at the wrong time and without important information to save lives. With the IoT, these processes could be seamlessly automated and integrated to prevent and mitigate crimes in a more efficient way. In the future, the transmission of emergency alarms and sensor data could occur instantly from machine to machine, or M to M, instead of manually. Automated applications can be used to gather and interpret the alarm information from various IoT devices to determine the probability of a false alarm, or help first responders use their time more efficiently and arrive at the right place. Smart sensors and cameras can be used to automatically transmit images and data from the scene of the crime directly to the officers. Using IoT, 2 companies and centers were able to cut alarm transmission times down to 5 seconds and reduce the volume of calls going between these centers by 10%. Now imagine if that was implemented nationwide, how much more productive our police, fire, and EMT responders could be with fewer false alarms and better, faster information from IoT-connected systems and devices. Internet of Things can help deliver first responders to the scene faster, more efficiently, and with more information on the current emergency if we invest now in the IoT infrastructure that we need so that we go beyond smart coffee makers and refrigerators. Unfortunately, there are still a few technological barriers that are preventing us from implementing an ideal system. The IoT consists of a few key components: a power source, a communication protocol, and data processing. Let's begin with power, since this is a subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee. These connected sensors in the Internet of Things must have a powered source, and while wired is preferred in some cases, it is typically too expensive to implement. Therefore, battery power offers the widest array of uses, but the currently short battery life must be improved to lower the cost of ongoing maintenance and fully tap the potential of IoT. As an example of this, recently a tech startup called Quirky developed a smart egg holder that would tell you when you were out of eggs in your refrigerator. Sounds interesting and useful, but due to current battery technology, it unfortunately needed its batteries replaced more often than it ran out of eggs to replace. So when lives are on the line instead of omelets, we need to make sure that these smart devices don't lose power. This will require investment in more powerful batteries with longer lifespans. Secondly, we need to ensure the availability of open wireless spectrum for IoT, and specifically IoT for public safety agencies. A government program called FirstNet is developing new wireless applications to aid first responders instead of using the existing radio dispatch technology first used in the 1960s. We need more funding for projects that involve improving our nation's infrastructure for wireless integration and emergency dispatch. As an example of our outdated emergency infrastructure, currently only about 200 out of 5,900 911 PSAP centers can handle text messages. Text messaging has been around for 20 years, but approximately 3% of 911 centers can receive texts. And when you consider that 96% of young people text regularly, but only 67% make phone calls regularly, you can see how much emergency information we may be missing. Also in our way looms the threat of multiple connection standards for smart devices. Computers generally connect to the Internet using one of 2 methods, Ethernet or Wi-Fi. However, smart devices connect using a plethora of standards, including Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Ethernet, Z-Wave, Zigbee, and Thread, in addition to numerous proprietary protocols. So currently, a Nest thermostat may know the temperature in a home is increasing due to a fire, but it is unable to contact the 911 PSAP through the security system if the homeowner is asleep or unavailable. IoT standards and interconnectivity would solve this. As an example, my company, LiveWatch Security, developed as soon as possible emergency response, or ASAPR, which is an application that is a step in that direction. It combines the speed of machine-to-machine communication with the latest group chat communication technology to allow people to process this information from the IoT and sensors. This IoT-enabled system has reduced false alarms by up to 30% while also improving response times, in some cases by 80%. We must continue to invest in the entrepreneurs that will develop these new applications and improve the way we process data from the IoT to turn it into useful information for our first responders. These are all issues that can be solved with additional smart investment in the smart things that make up the Internet of Things. We can obtain the most progress towards eliminating these obstacles by focusing on engineering advances in battery efficacy and low-power radio range, finding better ways to utilize wireless spectrum for first responders, and creating standards for communication between the IoT ecosystems. And finally, investing in better first responder infrastructure that can handle new types of communication to and from IoT devices and users. We are at the beginning of the next big shift in technology where machines and devices can talk to each other and instantly share data in ways that change lives. We can use the IoT to enhance the security of Americans and the safety of our first responders. To me, these are the compelling reasons to invest in this new frontier of technology. Thank you.
Chair, thanks the gentleman for his remarks. We'll now move into the question and answer portion of the hearing. I'll begin by recognizing myself 5 minutes for the purpose of questions, and I want to ask a couple of general questions on just on the general theme of the governance of the Internet of Things, and I'd like to ask each panelist to respond briefly in turn. And with Mr. Castro, we'll start with you, and it's an open-ended question, and I'll acknowledge that. But and many of you have already addressed this partially in your testimony. Well, what do you see as the appropriate role of Congress right now relative to the Internet of Things? Bearing in mind we're marking up data breach notification tomorrow, and probably before the spring is over, we'll have a markup on patent demand letters. But irrespective of that, I welcome your thoughts.
Sure, absolutely. I think number one issue right now, just because it's growing in attention, is data breach. I mean, we saw so many data breaches over the past year, high profile. This is something that Americans are worried about, and it's something where I think Congress can take immediate and an important step. But long term, as I think you heard from at least two panelists up here, we're really thinking about a national strategy for the Internet of Things. This is something that Congress can get behind, that the federal government can get behind, and really create a new vision for the future of commerce, the future of how citizens interact with technology, and how we can have an impact in so many different areas.
Thank you, Mr. Van Harlingen.
As has been mentioned, I think data breach management and rules around that and consistency around that nationwide would be very helpful to both the industry and consumers. As I mentioned in my opening statements, I think spectrum management, both for the unlicensed spectrum and, as Mr. Moorhead mentioned, for emergency first responders in a more licensed fashion, would be very good investments of time for the committee and for the federal government. I would advocate a light touch approach. This is a very new and emerging space where we have a lot to learn about what's possible and what value we can create.
Thank you. Ms. Schooler, your thoughts on the appropriate role of Congress?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's starting today, an open dialogue between industry, government, consumer groups to get the needs and the interests of the consumers on the table as we chart policy moving forward, as well as people from industry environments. I think we need, as I mentioned in my statement, to encourage a focus on security and interoperability. I think the opportunity to leverage public and private partnerships will be key. I think even if you look at the infrastructure and the capabilities within transportation, $351 billion opportunity in that segment, over I think it's 650,000 fleets and cars and trucks within the Postal Service and the U.S. government. Excellent opportunity to trial some of this technology with public and private partnerships. We talked about a national IoT strategy. I think that's critical moving forward. And again, open standards, open architecture, open source, interoperability, allow for the continuation of innovation.
Very good. Mr. Moorhead?
I agree on the points about open standards and interconnectivity. Furthermore, for most of the sensors, I think that investment in battery power and improved performance for batteries will be incredibly important as we develop new sensors. But finally, I do think investing in the infrastructure of our nation's PSAPs and emergency first responders is incredibly important. There was an article in the Journal recently about a company called SmartThings, and the Journal reviewed the technology of SmartThings. And at the end of the article, what they found is that the most compelling use of the technology was turning on the coffee maker in the morning, which frankly wasn't compelling, was the summary of the article. When you talk about investing the types of time and money that you would be investing, I think you can look to the nation's infrastructure and truly save lives, which has a measurable benefit of both the first responders and potential victims by investing in the public infrastructure and the PSAPs to get the right information distributed to emergency first responders faster. And that has a higher ROI and a faster payback than potentially some other projects.
Great. I thank all the panelists for their thoughts on that. Just being mindful that I want to stay within the constraints of 5 minutes because I'm going to insist that everyone else do that on the dais. Mr. Moorhead, you referenced the fact that, well, the Journal article with the coffee maker, well, that's really not that important. But what some days seems trivial to one person may down the road actually be very significant. And I guess the overarching theme here is the regulatory touch. You heard Ms. Blackburn mention it, the light regulatory touch. Could each of you speak in one word or 2 words to the regulatory touch that you'd like to see on the side of the agencies?
I think we want to embrace innovation and let let these companies. You saw the showcases out there today. Imagine what it'll look like 10 years from now. You want to see that innovation flourish.
Ms. Van Harlingen?
Agreed. A light touch that fosters innovation and creativity and exploration in the space.
Great. Ms. Schooler?
Light touch to spur innovation.
The coffee from the smart coffee maker is good dark, but regulatory touch I think would be better light.
Very good. You all can allowed me to fit within the constraints. I will now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Schakowsky. 5 minutes for questions, please.
Thank you very much for all your testimony. I wanted to give a little bit of opportunity to Mr. Moorhead to tell us a little bit more about LiveWatch. Mr. Moorhead, home security systems have been in existence long before 2002 when LiveWatch was created. So as we increase our technologies, et cetera, what motivated you and your business partners to enter this space, and how do you think that what you're doing improves consumer experience?
Thank you, Ranking Member Schakowsky. When we entered the space, we saw an opportunity with a business model in the home security industry that was relatively unchanged for decades, predominantly ADT, where customers were paying significant amounts of money and not getting the value that they needed. And we saw an opportunity to bring a technology focus, a disruptive technology focus, to a relatively nascent industry. And the nice thing about home security is it's formed upon a foundation of security, right? We talk about security and privacy here. Home security is by definition focused on security. So we use that as a foundation to disrupt the business by going direct to consumers and lower their prices by about 30 to 50% by eliminating the middlemen of sales and delivery and having customers self-install their wireless systems. So all of our infrastructure is wireless. It's formed on a basis of security. And then from that point, we added layers of additional technology, received multiple patents for that, to determine how customers could use the information that was flowing from those systems. And specifically, the opportunity we saw there is a home security system was really Internet of Things before there was an Internet of Things. We have sensors in homes and businesses throughout the country, throughout the world. Those produce data. That data is then transmitted to a central station where it looks for alarms. But the fact of the matter is we can do additional things with that information. And that's where we've taken the next step with our product, ASAPR, to allow customers to process the information and the data coming from those devices in a more effective way.
Are you concerned at all? Because a number of people will be contacted if there's some sort of breach of security in the home, right? How do you protect against unwanted invasions of that information that's circulated to a certain population of people, family members, for example?
the main thing that we try to do is we limit the information to the people that the homeowner or the business owner specifically selects to receive that information. So we keep it in a tight-knit group that is selected by that person to receive the information. The challenge is that there's power in numbers, and so we want to get the information to as many as many people as we can in an emergency, because we're looking for the one person that knows what's actually happening and that can help resolve it. So we need to get it ideally just to the one person that knows, but to do that we have to get the information to multiple people. So we allow the homeowner to put those people on the list, and then we bring them into a group chat to help facilitate the resolution of that alarm signal. And we found that thus far, implementing the right technology and security on the back end, it's been a productive way to do it. And instead of having 2 to 3 fixed members on an alarm distribution list, we've tested it with up to, in a school setting, up to 170 people simultaneously on one group chat to see what would happen if there was an emergency at a school. And there's no other system that can facilitate that communication.
Have you seen any particular problems that result from having a universe as large as 170?
At this point, we have not. Overall, it's been pretty positive. I think that there's some learning curve for consumers and users as they get up to speed and say, oh, I'm chatting and trying to have a conversation with 170 other people. But in the end, what you tend to find is that only 1 or 2 people actually step up in that conversation because they're the ones with the relevant information. So of that 170, we're really just looking for the 1 or 2 people that can help resolve the situation.
Thank you. Mr. Castro, you said something interesting at the end of your written testimony about education and building cybersecurity education. Congress should encourage universities to integrate cybersecurity training into technical degrees so that the next generation of coders, engineers build strong security into products at the outset. Do we not do that now as we're training people? And
yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, the field of information security has evolved over time. So originally, many of the problems that we saw in computer systems were because the coders weren't thinking about the security issues, and you had people fixing that afterwards. As we're moving into the Internet of Things, we want people to be thinking about the big issues that exist today and how they can fix them at the outset rather than doing it later on.
Thank you. I think universities and educational systems have a role, too, to play, and thank you for pointing that out.
Chair thanks the gentlelady. Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Tennessee. 5 minutes for questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've got 3 questions, and I want to hear from each of you on them, so I appreciate brevity. And if you want to expand to anything further, please do it in writing within the next week or so. First of all, let's talk about privacy, because that is always top of mind. What is this going to do to me if I use this thing? And when you talk about big data and the explosion of data that is out there, first of all, let's look at it like this. What do you think the trend is for the growth of data on the Internet? Are we going to continue to see this explosion? And secondly, what should Congress's role be in protecting that data? And let's just start very quickly, Mr. Castro. I'm going to start with you. Let's work down so we can move to question 2.
Sure. So in terms of the trend, it's increasing.
Okay.
Do you want me to address the second part? Or?
Sure.
Yeah. And so the second part about this is, Congress should be really looking at how consumers are hurt or not hurt by the uses of the data. So
defined harm.
Define harm and not regulate the collection. We want data to be collected and shared. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I agree. The trend is huge. The amount of data that we have is directly proportional to the value we can create. And I think the way to deal with it, as in the FTC's recommendations, is pay very attention to providing notice and choice to the consumers.
Okay.
I saw data recently where 90% of the data today was created in the last 2 years. I think that's indicative of the pace of innovation and the creation of data. And I think whatever we say in terms of data growth, we will be grossly wrong. We will undercall it. What do we need to do from a policy perspective? Again, I think we need to bring multiple parties to the table. I think we need to bring the government, industry, consumer groups to understand what some of the use cases are and create policy around use case versus a broad blanket policy to try and manage every scenario. And two, I think we need to build security in from the onset, as I mentioned in my testimony, from the device to the network to the cloud. Okay. And when we often say we want to create redundancy in that transmission, it means you don't only secure it at one point, you secure it throughout the transmission and the manipulation of the data. So those are my two comments.
Okay. Mr. Moorhead?
Obviously be substantial growth in the data. I think you'll see multiple models emerge because this is not a winner-take-all market. And for lack of better terms, I'll call it an Apple model and a Google model. An Apple model where the data is more private, and a Google model where the data is used publicly. The customer, the consumer may get less expensive hardware, less expensive or free services, but the data will be used to provide other options. So I think multiple models will emerge for the data.
Okay, second question, I want to look at education for consumers and some of the consent agreements that companies have when you're talking about the Internet of Things and the utilization of this data. Do you think that companies in these agreements for a particular service, that they adequately inform consumers and that consumers understand how this data is going to be utilized and what can be done to improve those privacy policies, if you will, so that consumers are offering true informed consent when they agree to utilization of some of the services that are there. And, you know, one we discussed yesterday was insurance companies wanting you to utilize some type of component, and it gives you the number of hard brakes and fast stops and speeds driven, things of that nature. And we've got only 45 seconds left, so let me do this. I'm going to, I'll ask for that response. I want to move on to the third question, just to lay it out, since we're going to run out of time. The economic impact, and Accenture had a great report on the economic impact of the Internet of Things. And I'd like to get your take on that statement. We have it for you. And I want to know if you agree with it. And then I'd like for you to speak specifically when you respond in writing to the challenges that exist in the United States to realizing this type of economic growth. What are the barriers to entry? What are the hurdles that are going to be there? What are we doing wrong from a regulatory side that are disenfranchising innovators? And I yield back my time.
Sure. Thanks, the gentlelady. Gentlelady yields back, and those responses will be anticipated as written responses. Mr. Cardenas of California, you're recognized for 5 minutes for questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question I have is to Ms. Schuler. The city of Los Angeles is still a pretty big economic juggernaut for manufacturing in this country. When it comes to the Internet of Things and that type of innovation, what do we anticipate for manufacturing and production of products, et cetera, and the streamlining? And what's in the back of my mind is jobs, the opportunity to have successful businesses and therefore a good, robust economy. So what can we expect going forward? Is this something that's going to be utilized more and more when it comes to manufacturing, or something that we've plateaued on, or where are we at, do you think?
Excellent question. We very much believe manufacturing will be, smart manufacturing in particular, will be an excellent opportunity for the Internet of Things. At Intel, we actually deployed a smart manufacturing pilot within one of our manufacturing facilities. And as you know, we make millions of things every year, so I think we're a pretty good test case. In that implementation, we found that we collected data that allowed us to do predictive maintenance. And with predictive maintenance, you increased uptime, you improved yields. And in that pilot, we realized a $9 million return on that single opportunity for that pilot in that single factory. Accenture published a report recently that they said 87% of the CEOs in the country see a long-term job growth opportunity. And I think to put that into practical terms, if you think about lowering the cost of goods sold, that's a great way to attract jobs back to the U.S. So number one, let's optimize our manufacturing facilities from a product cost perspective. Use the technology to use predictive maintenance as a capability to increase uptimes, again, bringing down the total cost of goods, and to improve the utilization and the effective utilization rates of the equipment, again, improving output. So I think all of these things will result in job creation and bringing jobs back on shore.
Thank you, and I like your example that you gave, and it reminds me that efficiency is a win-win-win-win-win, not only for the manufacturer but also for the consumer and for the community, which leads me to my next question. Brian, if you could please, hopefully it's a great answer for Los Angeles. California is going through a drought. We have yet to see the worst of it. So what do you see in the consumer space and even in the industrial space when it comes to efficiency, opportunities for energy, water, things of that nature with this technology?
So one of the technologies that we're working on in particular is a technology that we call ECHO that allows a consumer's home or a business to monitor their energy use, their water use, in great detail through a single point using the existing infrastructure in the home. It's a very cost-competitive technology or cost-effective technology. We think will educate people about how water and power are being used in their house and lead to improved behavior around that consumption.
Okay. So you see a lot of advancements there and a lot more usage.
Absolutely. It's a place that we're putting a lot of our research efforts.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a lot more efficient than pounding on the door when I tell my kids to take shorter showers.
Agreed. It's also very good at detecting leaks, which are a huge source of water waste in the city.
Well, thank you. And the last question to whoever would like to help enlighten us, what can we learn from the rest of the world? We're very spoiled in this country. We're still the economic juggernaut of the planet. We are looked to by many places around the planet for leadership, but once in a while we see ourselves look and then jog our head back and go, wow, they got it right over there. They did something really cool, or they did something that's advanced, or something that we probably should have thought of, but we didn't. What examples can you enlighten us about what's going on maybe around the world that we could learn from and then take their leadership?
I'll jump in and following up on your question about the water. If you look at India, I mean, so many countries have these big economic and social problems. They don't have any alternative but to go to the best technology and really look for an innovative solution. So in India, they had decaying water infrastructure. Using smart technology, they were able to actually, cut significant waste at less cost than it would have been to replace the infrastructure. So really, the United States should be looking at the same thing. We have decaying infrastructure. We just have a lot more money. So how can we do this really efficiently?
Thank you. Real quick.
I'd be happy to go next. I think I noted in my testimony that we see national IoT plans in other countries, Germany, Brazil, China. I definitely think as we had a broadband plan, we should have an IoT strategy and plan for the country. I think that would help us accelerate our learnings and accelerate our deployments, which is critical. And just interestingly enough, a little tidbit from the demo room, I was talking to the SteadyServe beer keg optimizer, which I think is a fascinating IoT use case. And in that deployment, one of the things that he was discussing, and we were talking about, was the adoption between the U.S. and Europe. Well, in Europe, they're looking at the opportunity, looking at the return on the investment, and adopting the technology much more aggressively. And in the U.S., there's still some hesitancy because it's not how we are used to doing it. And I think collectively, between government and industry, large business and small business, we have to start embracing technology in a much more aggressive fashion than we have in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, thanks the gentleman. The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Lance. 5 minutes for your questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the panel. I was very pleased to see Alcatel-Lucent Bell Labs and Qualcomm representing the district I serve at the showcase today, and I thought it was a wonderful showcase, and I commend the chairman for his hard work in making sure that it occurred. Bell Labs demonstrated truly remarkable 5G wireless technology that will enable a variety of Internet of Things applications, such as high-quality video, smart meters, and connected cars. One thing is clear, spectrum is one of the engines that will drive the Internet of Things revolution. To the panel in its entirety, what would you suggest that Congress do to provide the spectrum resources needed to support next-generation networks and the Internet of Things? Mr. Castro.
Thank you. As we can see in this, in these demos and just looking around the market, there are going to be a growing number of devices, a huge number of devices everywhere. So I think just in general, we're looking for commercial spectrum to be available, both licensed and unlicensed. And that's something that I think we're just going to continue Congress will have to continue to monitor and promote.
Thank you.
I agree. I think that that there are requirements for both licensed and unlicensed spectrum for a variety of different applications. I would encourage Congress to collaborate in detail with the industry on what those needs are and provide that spectrum as available.
Thank you.
I agree with the previous comments. I think we need to leverage both the licensed and unlicensed spectrum, utilize the technologies that exist today to get the economies of scale that will enable us to drive and growth and accelerate deployments. That in lieu of looking at a specific use case and a specific spectrum band for IoT, I think we should leverage what we have today.
Thank you. Mr. Moorhead.
As we look forward, it's important to understand where we're going with the spectrum. I think there's some lessons we can learn from the past. One of the challenges for those of us that have been doing IoT for the last decade or so is backward compatibility and sunset of existing wireless connectivity. 2G, 2.5G, and the sunset that's happening with the wireless providers there is creating a big issue for us where we already have Internet of Things systems in the field and we're having to replace those. It's a large expense. So as you think about moving forward what you want to do with the spectrum, I think it's important to consider backward compatibility and when and how those wireless systems sunset.
Thank you very much to the entire panel. Mr. Castro, privacy oftentimes means different things to different people. Do you think the market is capable of addressing concerns related to privacy in the Internet of Things market over time?
Yes, I think consistently what we see is when there's new technologies, and this goes back decades, centuries even, when the new technologies come out, there are fears and doubt and uncertainty about the technology. But what we see is over time, many of those issues are resolved just by the market, that you have this convergence between what business wants to do, what consumers want to have, and what government regulates. And a lot of these issues are worked out, which is why, in general, I think we want this light touch approach. Especially it's important with the Internet of Things because so much of the innovation is around the data. And if you can't have companies sharing and reusing this data for lots of innovative purposes, this kind of long tail of innovation, you're not going to get all this magnitude of benefits that we want to see.
Thank you. Belkin has a close connection to consumers and access to very personal data. How has Belkin approached the privacy and security of consumer data in its product offerings?
So Belkin takes privacy very seriously. Some of our products, are very close to consumers, as you mentioned, including cameras and things like that. We work very closely on security, try to stay standard and ahead of the curve with industry standards. We have an application security team that is very active in the industry, working with the Black Hat community and other security researchers. And they're very thorough at reviewing our products both before launch as well as after launch.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back 28 seconds.
The chair thanks the gentleman. The gentleman does yield back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Houston, Mr. Olson. 5 minutes for your questions, please.
I thank the chair and welcome to our witnesses. I want to follow up my colleagues' comments from California about manufacturing. As you all know, in the last decade, lots of good manufacturing jobs have left America and gone overseas. Many reasons: excessive taxes, excessive regulations, but this appears to be an opportunity to bring things back to America with the IoT. So my question is for you, Ms. Schooler, as one who has manufacturing as part of your business. You mentioned Germany, Brazil and China. What are they doing that we're not doing? What can we learn from them? And how can we make sure we have U.S. leadership, to quote you, in the future on the IoT?
Thank you. Thank you. So one of the things that I noted was some of the advancements in the manufacturing capabilities in the IoT standards and national policy in other countries. If you look in areas like Germany, you will see some of the most highly automated, highly advanced, connected factories in the world. I think there's a lot we can learn by going into some of these other geographies and understanding and leveraging some of the advancements that they put into place up until now. If you look at places like China, they're highly adopting and supporting things like smart cities, where they're using the technology not only for a manufacturing capability, but also for societal positive impact by looking at the air quality as an example. We can look at use cases such as monitoring the health of an oil pipeline. All of these things, and a lot of it's around predictive maintenance. I think as we journey as industry over into these other geographies, understand the deployment capabilities that are in place, we need to bring that back into the dialogue that we're having on a regular basis, both with our other industry partners as well as government, to continue to progress our policy to support some of the implementations of these technologies moving forward.
I know there are at least 2 domestic groups that are looking at interoperability here in America and open standards. Is that enough? Should there be more? Who else should be involved in this? Because let's bring those jobs back.
Standards is an excellent point. We have the OIC and the IIC, which I believe are the 2 consortiums that you're inferring. One is the Industrial Internet Consortium, and the other is the Open Internet Consortium. In both of those cases, you're taking very large members of industry, bringing them together to really set whether it be an architectural framework or a series of test beds that allow for the understanding of the deployment. It's one thing to set standards, it's another thing to architect and build solutions based on those standards. So in both of those bodies, you have not only the definition of the architecture, but the deployment and the testing of the implementation of that architecture. So I think those are a good start. I think if you look from a connectivity perspective, you have efforts in 3GPP around 5G that are looking at IoT-specific use cases. We need to continue to put wood behind the arrow on the connectivity solutions as well. So I think we have a good start. I think as we continue through the commercial deployment phase, it remains to be seen as if it's enough or if we need to extend those standards efforts further as we learn more through our initial commercialization efforts.
Thank you. Mr. Castro, any comments, sir, on the issue of manufacturing, bring it back to America? Mr. Van Harlingen, anybody before I got my times run out here?
I think you're absolutely right. When we look at the opportunity here, the United States leads in this technology area, and we want to regain these manufacturing jobs. The way to do it is by investing and having the most innovative factories. And when we look in the examples that I have in my the testimony I submitted for the record, we see U.S. companies leading in this space. I mean, Intel, Harley-Davidson, Raytheon, these companies that are able to track to the turn of a screw what's going on in a factory and use that data to operate more efficiently than anyone else. That's our competitive advantage. But we have to make sure we're investing in that opportunity. We have to make sure that our schools that are leading the development of this have the funding to do that, and that's one opportunity that Congress might be able to help support further.
Ms. Van Harlingen?
As a consumer electronics company, most of our focus is on consumer products. A lot of our manufacturing is done offshore, but we're constantly evaluating opportunities to bring manufacturing back onshore. There have been a couple of instances in some of our business areas where we've done so, and we're enthusiastic about doing so. We look forward to IoT technologies brought by other companies into the manufacturing sector to make that more possible and more practical for companies like ourselves.
And welcome to come back to Texas. Mr. Moorhead, your final thoughts, sir.
I'm not as involved in the manufacturing side, but most of our vendors, unfortunately, do use offshore partners. Where I see the opportunity, though, here is the fact that we're talking about 25 billion devices being implemented in the United States. You can't, or some portion of that, you can't outsource the installation, activation, servicing, and redeployment of those devices here in the U.S. So potentially retraining that workforce to get them intelligent and smart on how to maintain and install the devices could be another way to engage the workforce in the United States, as opposed to just to being dependent on the manufacturing.
Thank you. Yield back. Out of time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes Mr. Mullen from Oklahoma for questions. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first off, I'd like to thank the CMT staff for organizing the showcase earlier this morning, and of course all the participants. I was kind of blown away. One technology is out there is brought to you by Al Sutherland from my state, who shared the amazing technology that has already proven extremely useful to people like myself in the farming and ranching business. Mr. Sutherland has a product called the Mesonet, where basically, and I hope I said that right, but basically it has a monitoring station in all 77 counties throughout the state. One of them is just located a couple of miles from our place. It gives us real up-to-date information. He was demonstrating the app on the phone. I will have that app downloaded real shortly, considering that when this time of the year we begin to start burning off fields, and then we enter hay season. It's very useful. In fact, I was very upset that I didn't already have it on my phone. It would have helped a few times laying that hay down. You can predict weather only so well. Well, it gives us some great technology. So it shows itself very useful out there. But there's been some fear around technology. There's this group of people out there that says, it's going to eliminate jobs. And so far, our panel, whoever wants to answer this, how do we combat that fear? People automatically fear things that they don't understand. We see that all the time. But there's an argument being said that, look, if we go so far and we start continuing getting smart machines, our unemployment's going to rise. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, I think we need to continue to communicate the positive impacts that we see by doing things like the smart manufacturing use case that we talked about earlier. As I noted, Intel implemented a smart capability within our own factory, and it provided a $9 million savings in just one factory. And what was that savings based on? Equipment utilization rates, predictive and preventative maintenance, and for every time you institutionalize one of those learnings, you bring down product costs. You bring down product costs, you get more competitive on a worldwide basis, and you have the opportunity to bring jobs back to the United States. In those cases, I think we need to get much more aggressive in sharing those stories and sharing those learnings to balance out some of the fear and uncertainty that are put into the press around the other use cases where the news is very negative around job destruction.
Right.
I noted a data point earlier that in the January Accenture survey, 87% of the CEOs believe it's going to create new jobs. Mr. Moorhead noted that you can't, even in some cases if it's a consumer device and it is being manufactured offshore, these still need installed. There's still services. There's still new information type positions that are going to be created. It may not be in all cases the types of jobs that we're used to today, but it will result in job creation moving forward. I'm very passionate about that.
So how do we educate the people? Do we start putting these in trade schools? Do we start in high school? How do we implement it? And that's for anybody on the panel that wants to try answering this.
I'll jump in. I mean, so there is this myth that robots or automation kill jobs. I think part of that is an education problem that better economics lessons will teach people that if you look at the history, I mean, if we want full employment, yeah, we can get rid of John Deere and all the tractors on farms, and problem solved. That's not what we want to do. We want lower prices for consumers. We want more efficiency. And most of the Internet of Things examples that we're talking about, they're addressing these issues. They're addressing, productivity on farms. You look at safety issues, automation with grain bins. That's directly, making workers safer. That's not eliminating jobs. That's actually improving quality of life. So I think once people start to see how this actually helps them, they're going to realize it's not technology to be feared, but the technology improves their life.
Anybody else?
So agreed. This technology promises, like any new technology, it's going to bring change. Hopefully it'll bring manufacturing opportunities back to the U.S., and that'll create jobs. But it's also going to create different types of jobs. As we mentioned, in the service industry and things like that, I think it's going to be important to invest in education to prepare people for those new types of roles.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and once again appreciate the CMT putting this hearing together. Thank you. I will yield back.
Chair, thanks the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Harper of Mississippi. 5 minutes for questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to each of you for being here today. And really exciting to see the stuff on display this morning at the showcase. And I was obviously very happy to see Camgian Microsystems there, which had a display on their new product, Egbert. And so Gary Butler, who started that, it's pretty remarkable what it does and can be used for a broad range of remote monitoring, including the infrastructure health for, say, bridges and dams. And the future looks great for our country, and to make sure that we have the innovation that we need and how we handle that, how we do it from Congress. So thank you for adding your insight to that. And Mr. Castro, I know we discussed the governance aspect of this already, but within that Internet of Things, would there be a difference on that governance based upon the specific product or machines in that variance there? How would you comment on that?
Absolutely. I think the traditional way that Congress has looked at a lot of data issues is industry specific, and I think that's a very useful framework. And it differentiates us from Europe, which has these broad-based privacy rules, and I think that's one of the reasons we're so much more successful in this space. So going forward, we should continue to do that. We should look, are there areas where people have particular sensitivities? Maybe it's in education, maybe it's in healthcare, and we have different rules there, but we allow that same flexibility of sharing data throughout all of those sectors.
And so should that governance, even different within itself, be different than other industries, let's say? How are you, give me a little bit more meat on the bones for that.
Yeah, so it really depends, I think, on what the consumer harm is that we're trying to protect against. So, for example, a really good example that we have historically is discrimination against pregnant women when they go to apply for a job. That's something that we don't want to have happen. So we restrict that use. It doesn't matter how you found that information out. It doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. It doesn't matter if you guessed it from using some kind of in-home smart system, or you just saw someone walking down the street. The point is we regulate the use, and that's what we want to do. We want to look very clearly at what it is we don't want to have happen and make that illegal, and that provides consumers the confidence that no matter where their data goes or if there's a data breach, they're still safe.
Well, what we want to make sure from our end is that we don't issue some regulation or enable some regulation that stifles innovation within the creative industry. And so that sometimes is a tough balancing act, but it seems to allow for more innovation if we get out of the way sometimes and don't create that roadblock at the beginning. Ms. Schooler, if I could ask you, do you see an overlap between consumer uses and enterprise or industry use of the Internet of Things?
I'll respond to that in two factions.
Okay.
I think from a privacy concern, the use cases are very different. As Mr. Castro noted, I think the consumer privacy issues are going to have need to have a specific type of set of considerations around how you share information, what personal information you share, versus in an enterprise implementation, you're really collecting, analyzing data within the confines of your own enterprise itself. So I think those use cases will be very different. The area that I do think that we can leverage learnings is in security. I think if we look at security as a foundational element built in from the onset of implementation, there's a couple different vectors that we have to consider. One, you need to secure the device, the network, and the cloud, because all are critical on-ramps into the Internet of Things. And if you only secure one of those assets and not the entire pipeline, if you will, I think that's an insufficient way to look at the architecture from a device to a cloud perspective. So that's one. Number two, I think we not only need to build in intellectual property into our silicon architectures, and we're doing much of that at Intel. We also need to also build upon that software that monitors and manages those security concerns. The unique position that we're in at Intel is we have both assets. So we're looking at how do we not only secure the device to the network to the cloud, how do we do it in silicon, and how do we do it in software, such that we can create the most robust, secure IoT implementation possible across consumer, industrial, and commercial implementations.
Thanks to each of you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair thanks the gentleman from Mississippi. Seeing no other members wishing to ask questions, I do want to thank the witnesses and the members for participating in today's hearing. Before we conclude, I would like to include the following documented to be submitted for the record by unanimous consent, a letter on behalf of the Consumer Electronics Association. Pursuant to committee rules, I remind members they have 10 business days to submit additional questions for the record. I ask that the witnesses submit their response within 10 business days upon receipt of those written questions. I also want to take just a moment and thank the subcommittee staff for their hard work on the showcase this morning. I thought it was very informative and instructive, and without objection, the subcommittee is adjourned.